Hello, this is Matt on the Moon Lambo channel. Why wasn't the price pump for XRP bigger, much bigger than what we saw when Ripple CEO Brad Garlinghouse announced to the world that the SEC was actually going to drop its appeal against them? Why was it so small? And look, I understand, of course, XRP already had legal clarity, and so even this going away, it doesn't impact stuff for you and I, but it doesn't matter that I know that and you know that. The market ties all of this together. And so when something happens with Ripple and the SEC, XRP has always responded. Which is why I've always stated that the SEC has more power over the price action of XRP than Ripple ever has. It has to do with what the SEC is doing. So why didn't it pump bigger? Is something weird going on here? Some sort of manipulation, so on and so forth? Well, I'm going to get to that. I personally, I'll just tell you this, I'm not surprised, and if you've been listening to my thoughts on this leading up to this point, then you may already know that, but the best is yet ahead for XRP still, this market cycle specifically. But I want to talk about the reasons why this is, as well as this story titled, "Here's Why SEC Dropped Its Appeal Against Ripple Despite Ripple's Active Cross Appeal." And so don't forget, just because the SEC is willing to drop their appeal, it doesn't mean that Ripple is. So let's talk about it. But before going further, I do want to be clear, I do not have a financial background of any kind. I am not offering financial advice. And you definitely should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. I'm just an enthusiast who enjoys making YouTube videos about crypto-related topics, but just as a hobby and just for fun. And so here was the original post, March 19th, just a few days ago from Brad Garlinghouse. He wrote, "This is it, the moment we've been waiting for. The SEC will drop its appeal. A resounding victory for Ripple, for crypto. Every way you look at it, the future is bright. Let's build." Now, that was reposted by Stuart Alderati. He's the chief legal officer at Ripple. And he wrote, "Today, Ripple moves forward, stronger than ever. This landmark case set a precedent for the domestic crypto industry. With the SEC dropping its appeal, Ripple is now in the driver's seat and will evaluate how best to pursue our cross appeal. Regardless, today is a day to celebrate this victory." And that was one of the most interesting things, because that was the first post I saw from anyone as this news had just broken, indicating, so wait, you're saying the SEC's donezo, but Ripple, they haven't dropped the cross appeal, and that wasn't a requirement for the SEC to drop their appeal? That's astonishing. But that's just because there's a change in leadership. The war on crypto is over, and that means if the SEC takes a pummeling as a result of this, so be it. And I was very happy to see that. And so again, into this piece here, attorney Fred Rispoli shares his thoughts on what could be happening behind the scenes in the Ripple lawsuit, especially now that the SEC has dropped its appeal. "It is no longer news that the Ripple lawsuit saw a major development this week, resulting in the SEC dropping its cross appeal. Although the regulator has not issued an official statement confirming the decision, pro-crypto journalist Eleanor Terrett expects this to happen after the SEC closed-door meeting next week." Okay, and so some people have speculated that the reason that we haven't seen XRP pump even higher is because the SEC hasn't confirmed this. I don't believe that for a second. I genuinely don't. There's a whole article highlighting perspective from somebody in the community. I just respectfully disagree. Here it was titled, "Expert Says XRP 10x Rally Will Come Soon, but not in 24 hours. Or within the next 24 hours, I think it was said. Anyway, the point is, and the key takeaway here is, Ripple is stating this because it's true. There's about 0% of humans on the planet that think Ripple's lying about that. So that's the same as if the SEC had stated it. It doesn't matter. And so maybe you could see some sort of tiny little pump or something if the SEC, when the SEC finally acknowledges it. But it doesn't matter. See, at that point, it's already priced in. We are aware of this. And so I don't think it functionally matters. I really don't. And you haven't seen it from the SEC, and people understand this. You haven't seen it from the SEC because technically there still has to be a vote. It's just obvious that the votes will be there, given that you've had this change in administration. Anyway, piece continues. Despite the SEC agreeing to drop its appeal, Ripple has not made a similar decision, prompting attorney Rispoli, the founder of HODL Law, to suggest what could be happening behind the scenes, and that's attorney Fred Rispoli of the XRP community right there. He was on with Tony Edward and Thinking Crypto. It says, first, the pro-XRP legal expert emphasized that the SEC's decision to drop its appeal aligns with its recent actions in other crypto-related lawsuits. With the SEC dropping its appeal despite Ripple still keeping its cross-appeal active, Attorney Rispoli suggested that the move could be the regulator's way of negotiating a settlement. This settlement revolves around Ripple's XRP sales to institutional clients, which were found to be securities. Following this decision, Judge Annalisa Torres ordered Ripple to pay a fine of $125 million and granted the SEC's request for a permanent injunction on XRP institutional sales. Now, given the current circumstances of the lawsuit, Attorney Rispoli speculated that the settlement negotiations could see the SEC ask Ripple to drop its cross-appeal for a reduced fine. He also noted that this agreement might also involve dropping the permanent injunction Judge Torres imposed on Ripple's institutional sales. Okay, so I'll just say, Ripple would love that, because they've had to do stupid workarounds like using stablecoins for cross-border transactions instead of XRP. They've used Tether for corridors touching the United States. It's just dumb. It's just dumb. And I think that just highlights the degree to which Judge Torres really bungled that part of this lawsuit. But the good news is we got what we wanted as XRP holders, XRP to be declared not a security. So, on the things that really truly matter the most, Ripple won, we won, it's fine. And so, but it's just silly that they have to do these workarounds because Judge Torres made a dumb decision on this part of it. Like, clearly that these transactions don't pass the Howey test. You're talking about XRP used as a bridge currency. So those things, it settles in 3 to 5 seconds, son. How can that possibly reasonably be considered an investment of money with expectation of profit when it's being used for utility purposes? That does not compute. And I will continue to insist. I know we all understand that, but it's stupid. So it would be cool for Ripple anyway, if they could find a way to make this go away, work out something anyway. Anyway, if the parties reach such an agreement, Ripple will not be subject to the lawsuit's legal constraints, and according to Rispoli, this decision will allow Ripple to raise funds and file with the U.S. SEC for an IPO. So that's the other big aspect of this, which I think it's an inevitability. It's just a question of time. There will be a Ripple IPO. Anyway, there have been debates about Ripple going public in the United States through an IPO. However, many have highlighted the SEC lawsuit as a potential factor that could hinder Ripple's IPO chances. Notably, if the parties reach an agreement, as stated by Rispoli, it could pave the way for the highly anticipated IPO. But in the meantime, Ripple does not seem interested in accepting the terms of a reduced fine. The company, through its CEO Brad Garlinghouse, noted that if it is negotiating to have the SEC drop everything, this includes the permanent injunction and the $125 million fine. Garlinghouse noted that the current SEC leadership agrees with the company that it should not have filed the lawsuit in the first place. Hence, Ripple believes it is not ideal to be penalized based on the court's findings and orders. Spot on. So you have a different leadership now. It's a whole different world than even just several months ago, roughly. And it's just amazing me. Like I never would have guessed a year ago that you'd have a situation where, even with the change in administration, even if I knew that would happen, where you'd have the SEC drop an appeal and then be willing to do that even if Ripple doesn't. Like, that's astonishing to me. That really, truly is. Oh, by the way, so another reason that people were speculating that XRP didn't pump higher, manipulation. God, I just do not buy into it. I just respectfully disagree on this. There's an XRP community member highlighting that, there's low volume, and so there's manipulation, and it should have gone higher, those types of arguments. Here's the quote: "Make no mistake, price is being manipulated." Yeah, okay. I don't think so. There's no proof of that. That's just a thing that's being stated, but I will just insist, when the market understands that something is likely, then it's considered priced in, and then it doesn't pump. And I think chart analyst Dom really nailed this. So take a look at this. This is a post from March 12th, 2025. This is a week before Ripple would announce that the SEC was getting rid of their appeal, right? And what did he say? Well, he was right about it. He shared what his expectations were, and he was right. And he has a proper understanding of this environment and why market participants are behaving the way that they are, impacting XRP price. And so he wrote, XRP pumped 100% in 4 hours when the SEC declared it not a security. And so, folks, he's referencing July 13th, 2023, and that did happen. The price nearly doubled. So that's different than this time, obviously. Well, why is that? Well, check this out. Dom wrote, "Do I think something similar will happen this time? No. Back when this happened in July 2023, the market wasn't really expecting it, and it was solely focused on the coin itself." Now, folks, I will pause to note, yes, that is indeed true. came out of left field. It's the type of thing you would have hoped for, but didn't know it was going to happen, so people didn't buy, believing that was the case. The news broke, the coin pumped. That's what happened there. And so that's why in recent days and weeks, I've been saying this doesn't functionally matter. I said you can get scenarios where XRP can pump ridiculously on news, but that like in this, well, the example I kept citing was Gary Gensler on November 21st when he announced that he was going to resign, which I thought was a virtual certainty. There was such exuberance in the market that caused XRP to pump. That news, which wasn't even XRP specific. And so that's why, given that you're in this environment where there's less excitement, there's a lot of scared people, it's behaving differently now, right? And so check this out. Here's what else he had to say. So he said, back when this happened in July 2023, the market wasn't really expecting it, and it was solely focused on the coin itself. Now, this time around, the market has high confidence it's coming, especially with the new leak today. Now, if the market was raging and the lawsuit was settled, I think it would cause a much greater impact due to risk appetite. But if it happens anytime over the next week or so, I think we'll be lucky to see a plus 20%. The more substantive hope is Ripple has been waiting for this to announce some things they have been working on. If you think XRP is topped, this news may be your little exit pump. All right, so that aged like a fine wine. It absolutely did. And this is in line with what my expectations were as I've articulated on this channel. It just makes sense. It makes logical sense here. And so these ideas that it hadn't pumped because of manipulation or anything else, I don't think that that's a proper analysis of what's going on. Like, read the room, folks. People knew that to expect this because the SEC has been eliminating voluntarily every investigation that it's running and ending actual lawsuits that were in progress. It's like, yeah, this isn't exactly a surprise. So, yeah, the market pumped a little bit, but is it crazy to think it didn't double like when XRP got legal clarity? No, this is normal. You shouldn't be surprised, but let's not get into weird conspiracy theory stuff talking about how it's manipulated, even though there's no proof of stuff like that, when really it just makes rational sense that XRP did exactly what it did. I'm not a financial advisor. You should not buy or sell anything because of anything I say or write. That would be a very, very, very bad idea. Until next time, to the moon, Lambo.